Hey, what's going on, guys? Vinny Hart here from Creation Astronomy Now.com and Creationist Company, coming to you with my brother Joe.
Hey everybody!
Welcome to the Creation Astronomy Now Podcast, episode number 16. We had kind of a bad podcast last time.
Yeah, kind of a
Fortunately,
bad
we
podcast.
didn't get any thumbs down, which was always good because we don't like thumbs down. But yeah, I knew that I was gonna need some help here. So, see, recently there's been the story going on, the Big Bang smoking gun discovered. It's a very complex story. I read some articles on it. I had trouble understanding it, so I decided to bring in an expert. So we are pumping in, all the way from Australia, a physicist and a cosmologist, pardon me, that old-fashioned word for astronomer, and he's also a Christian with a biblical creationist worldview.
No! You can be a Christian, a creationist, and a scientist both?
There's something going on here. So, Dr. John G. Hartnett, how is it possible that you are a creationist and a scientist?
Wow, that's a good question, I suppose. God made me. God made me both Christian and scientist.
So evolutionists always, like Bill Nye especially, he was always talking, you can't be, Bill Nye said it, he said you can't be a good scientist if you're creationist, but yet you are?
Yeah, I've been working in developing clocks. You didn't mention that, but I build the most precise clock in the universe, a cryogenically cooled sapphire clock that would gain or lose a second in about 100 million years. I've published about 200 papers in peer-reviewed journals and books, and I've written and published in astrophysics and cosmology. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a serious scientist, and I'm a biblical creationist.
Now, this is just kind of a minor question I just had personally, but when you talk to people, do you ever because sometimes when I'm talking to people, especially when I get into astronomy, I'll start kind of rambling and they'll just what are you talking about? Do you ever make people confused? Because I understand, when you got a PhD that high, you got a lot of intelligence in there that a lot of people can't understand. So do people ever do you ever have any communication problems with people?
I mean, that goes with the territory. But you have to learn to speak on different levels. And if you're speaking to 14-year-olds, then you have to try to, modify your language that they can understand. But of course, if you're in a seminar amongst your peers in the same field, then you can use all the jargon and terminology that they would understand, So it sort of goes with the territory.
Absolutely. So now let's go ahead and get into the topic of the day. The Big Bang smoking gun discovery. So could you basically start by giving a basic overview of it and then kind of get into more of the in-depth stuff for those of our listeners who are more complex?
Okay, so the Big Bang essentially says that 13.8 billion years ago there was a very hot initial condition. Some people call it an explosion, which really is not correct. But it was a very high temperature fireball, put it that way. And they claim that that fireball underwent enormous quintillionth of a second after the Big Bang. This fireball expanded by a volume expansion of 10 to the 78. That's 1 with 78 zeros after a volume expansion in about 10 to the minus 32 of a second or something like that. This is called the inflationary epoch. And this was proposed in the Big Bang because of certain problems that they had. And these problems were associated with things like why is the universe so smooth? Why is matter just so smoothly distributed through the universe? Why is the universe even Euclidean space? They call it flatness, which means, like triangles have 180 degrees and things like that. That actually has been a cosmic problem for the cosmologists. There's other problems too. Things like the cosmic microwave background radiation is uniform. It's smooth 3 degrees or 2.73 degrees Kelvin, just above absolute zero. Why is that? And there's other weird things like, why are there no magnetic monopoles? These are like something that theorists predicted. So there was all these problems. And inflation, this idea of this super rapid expansion, was the proposed solution to the problem. Now, what happened several weeks ago, this telescope situated at the South Pole claimed to have discovered this certain type of polarization in photons coming to Earth in some of these cosmic microwave background photons, right? And they claimed that that is some sort of prediction of this inflationary epoch of the Big Bang. So when they referred to the smoking gun, they are saying that that's sort of like you wander in on a crime scene where you see a guy standing there with a gun and the smoke's pouring out of the barrel of the gun, right? And the conclusion is, oh, he must have been the culprit who did the murder because he's holding the gun. Well, they're likening the discovery of these sort of swirls in this certain polarization, they call them B-mode polarization of these photons. They liken this to the smoke, I suppose, pouring out of the gun or the whole gun, who knows, as evidence that this inflationary epoch is true. It did happen, and hence, of course, therefore, that the Big Bang is directly observed, they say. That's sort of the summary of it.
Right, that's a very complex summary, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
I always stay very close to my algebra so I can understand these guys when they're talking. But, I noticed, I saw a clip once where, these scientists were just so happy that they found this thing. So what goes through your mind?
Yeah.
You see those people so excited. Why do you think they're so thrilled?
That seems very odd. Why are they so excited?
Well, they're celebrating. They think they've made a prediction. And are popping the champagne corks, right, to celebrate this discovery. But, within 3 days of the announcement, other theorists were saying, hold on a minute, put the champagne corks back in the bottle. There may be other explanations, and this is the problem. In cosmology, you make observations. You would have to rule out all other possible causes for those observations before you could sort of prove prove your thesis. And that is a serious problem in cosmology because you just can't do that.
So how do you, as a creationist and other creationists, how do they view this smoking gun discovery?
Well, it's like, everything else that goes on in evolutionary thinking. It's largely storytelling because you have to understand the difference between experimental, repeatable science and historical science. And cosmology is largely historical science. And the reason it is because you can't interact with the universe. They say they make predictions and observe. Well, they do make observations, there's no doubt about it. But as I said earlier, you would have to prove that what you are seeing could not come from any other possible cause. Whereas in a laboratory, what you do, you interact with your experiment. You might send some light in or you might kick it and see what happens. But with the universe, you can't interact with it. It's not a laboratory where you can do an experiment and do a sort of a repeatable experiment and get a predictable outcome. And that's the problem. And so it is largely just storytelling about what you believe happened in the past. It's much, again, like our case of the forensic science, the guy going on the crime scene and seeing the guy standing there with the smoking gun. Can you be certain that the guy holding the smoking gun was the perpetrator of the crime if you never saw him actually do it? You can't, can you? You can't be certain because You didn't.
Okay, anyway, Bill Nye, he liked to point out that, he's like, we can observe it just like we see the observe a crime. Well, the thing about the crime scenes, you look at the scene of crime, you have to have some eyewitnesses. And we have an eyewitness, but they don't have any eyewitnesses. They have to go by just observation, which can get very, very complicated. So anyway,
it's all circumstantial. That's the whole point. It's all circumstantial evidence.
Right. So now, this Big Bang smoking gun. They're claiming that it blows the horizon and baryon number problem. Which, by the way, guys, I talk a little bit about those two problems, the horizon problem and the baryon number problem, in very layman terms in my ebook, The Big Bang versus Science, which you can get for free on our website. But anyway, does the Big Bang smoking gun, does that throw those problems out the water?
Well, the inflation was, one of the problems it was meant to solve is the horizon problem, right? With the idea that wherever we look in space, we see the same uniform temperature of the cosmic microwave background. And so if you could prove inflation to be a true historical event, then you would have an answer to the horizon problem. You would, right? That would be the case. But can you prove it? That's the question. And it's not just baryon number problem, it's, as I told you, the monopole problem, the flatness problem, the smoothness problem, the isotropy problem. All of these problems are meant to be solved by this. Yeah.
So would you touch on some of these problems that there are with the Big Bang?
Well, it's a critical, a fine-tuning problem that the Big Bang has. The Big Bang is the notion that as we understand that the universe started expanding out of a singularity 13.8 billion years ago, and then in fitting the theory to the observation, certain things have arisen that are necessary to fit theory to observation. And these I call fudge factors. One of them is dark matter. Dark matter is required on all scales in the universe, in galaxies, in clusters, in superclusters, and in the whole universe as a whole. Dark matter is unobserved, undetected. Now, I'm not against dark matter per se. In other words, if we could find some new particle that would fulfill the bill, then I would believe it to be true. But for 40 years now, experimentalists have been looking for dark matter in research labs, in experiments on Earth, all types of experiments, and they've never found it. So what it is dark matter and dark energy are fudge factors that are used to make the theory fit the observations. This is a little bit like that story. Do you know the Emperor's New Clothes? You know that story? You may not know it. You do know it.
Yeah, we know.
Right? And everyone, he wasn't wearing any clothes at all, was he? But everyone was saying, "Oh, how wonderful those clothes are." Who was the brave scientist who was going to speak out and say the emperor's naked? This is the problem, isn't it? It's the political environment in the scientific community, because grant funding. Can you imagine if you're funded to look for dark matter? Are you going to start denying its existence? Of course not. People want to get their grant funding. There's an enormous amount of money spent on this. And dark energy is the same problem. Dark energy was only brought, well, you could say it was brought back because they'd been around for a while with this idea of Einstein's cosmological constant that he had inserted into his field equations back in the 1920s. That was brought back because when they were looking at these high redshift supernova, these exploding stars, when you compared that of a certain spectral class of supernova, the type 1As, it seemed to be that they were dimmer than they should be, and therefore to make the theory fit the observations you had to add another fudge factor, and that's sort of an anti-gravity type effect. Now, what is dark energy? Something that causes things to repel each other. That's not known in physics. No one knows that in the lab. That's just like fairies in the bottom of the garden as far as real physics goes. But in cosmology, anything seems to be possible because they've got to make the theory fit. I could go on these things. The whole problem of the origin of the universe out of a singularity. A singularity is not exactly a black hole, but it's like the entire universe began without dimension, without matter, without energy, and it's expanded smoothly out of this point, at some point of infinite density, but even that makes no sense because it was started from nothing, so you can't have matter at infinite density. So there are many problems associated with that, and people are now trying to model the origin of, or the start of the universe out of this singularity. And Stephen Hawking says something like, we can't know how the universe began exactly because it had many histories. Hear that? Many histories, like in some quantum particle type world, and we only sampled some of them. It didn't have a unique history, is what he's saying. This is because they reject God. This is their worldview, a rejection of God. And there's no creator in their worldview. So the Big Bang has no creator. They can only then look to the laws of physics or nature for the start of the universe. But there are many fine-tuning problems too. As their universe expanded, it had to remain perfectly flat over the entire period of expansion. Flat meaning Euclidean space, which required a balance between kinetic energy and potential energy of something like a part in 10 to the 50. This is ultra fine tuning, that it was always tipped on this super sort of edge, best way to describe it, and it never went one way or the other. There are many of these type of issues, but that gives you a bit of a flavour of it.
Right. So now, I noticed that earlier you mentioned like the what was it, quadrillionth of a quadrillionth or something or other. They have so many precise things. What goes through your mind? They're like, we don't know exactly, but this is how it went. They proceed to show you exactly how it happened, down to the quadrillisecond. What goes through your mind when you hear about that? When you hear them talk about that?
That comes from their modelling of their inflation event, which occurred some 10 to the minus 32 after the Big Bang. So that's my quintillionth of a second after the Big Bang. And it only, no one knows what caused it. No one knows what caused it to start. No one knows what caused it to stop. No one even knows what it is made of or caused by. They even have names for this thing called an inflaton field. They make up all these words and they do this very fine mathematics. It's all mathematics. It's just, quite advanced. Mathematics are sort of a mixture of general relativity and quantum mechanics. And they come up with the idea that there was some sort of... the universe was something like a supercooled liquid or something, and there was a phase change. Like you cool water. If you're careful to cool water, you can actually cool it below 0 degrees and it won't freeze. And then if you put some tiny, like a grain of sand in it, it will nucleate and suddenly all freeze out. This causes a phase change. We see this in chemistry, and we see this even in cloud formation, for example. You have to seed it to form clouds and things like this. Well, this is what they're sort of talking about at that quintillionth of a quintillionth after the Big Bang. You have a sort of a phase change occurring and this rapid exponential expansion of the universe. Hey, guys, this is just storytelling. That's all it is. A very good story.
So now we got a few fan-asked questions. I went on Facebook and I asked, just basically friends and people who have liked the page, to ask some questions. And we got a few. First of all, Jake Dobrins, I just mentioned his name because he's the president of Creationist Company, our good friend. But he asked, why are so many creation scientists Australian? Is that just, I mean, I heard the Australians are smarter than us stupid Americans. Of course, you know, what am I saying? I am a stupid American. But what do you think of that?
No, I don't think that's true. I think there are many Americans. I think that's not. Maybe there's been a fairly strong creation presence in Australia with the Creation magazine starting in Australia, and Ken Ham and Carl Wieland in the 1980s starting up a ministry in Australia. But I think you have to remember the Institute of Creation Research, and John Morris started that in the 1960s with Dr. Whitcomb, published that book, very famous book, The Genesis Flood. And I think that started really the modern creationist movement. Well, that was American.
Yeah. Well, now, do you have, this is kind of a question I ask for the sake of the young scientists. Do you have any advice for young scientists, you know, that they're young, they haven't gone to college yet, they're probably in high school, and they're wanting to bring glory to God? What advice do you have for them when they're entering the scientific field?
Yeah, I really do encourage it. I think learn science well, you know. I think you find if you go into college and university that depending on the environment you're in, you may have to keep a low profile for a while to get your degrees. But after that, you know, depending on your situation, then you can sort of be more vocal and more open. And I find this to be true even in Australia, that it's smart to not be too open if you're doing, say, a PhD in a university until you've gotten to your end goal, you know what I mean?
Yeah, now, I understand you do teach some classes, right? I understand. I read your bio before, I think that was what it said. You're a professor, or?
Yes, yeah.
So what when you're teaching, you know, you can't really, are you disallowed to talk about a creator whatsoever, or are you allowed a little bit? How do you work with that?
No, you can't do that here. This is a secular university. Though a few weeks ago I rented a lecture, not rented, I got a lecture theatre and advertised a lecture, which I advertised around the university as Why Believe in God in an Age of Science. And about 50 students came along to that. So I quite openly presented a creation message in that lecture. But that was just a private thing that I just did on my own time. That's not part of any course curriculum or anything like that.
Now, this is kind of a question I like to ask a lot of scientists and experts in the field. It's this: what for you is the most fascinating part of the universe that testifies that there has to be a creator?
Well, then the most
fascinating thing
question.
You can think of.
I think, huh?
The most fascinating thing you can think of.
When I look at the different nebula, when I look at these, like Cat's Eye Nebula and the Triangular Nebula, when I look at these structures, which are probably most of them are exploding stars, and the shells of gas that they leave around them. And with the Hubble Space Telescope, it's photographed all these incredible pictures. Well, I think about that, and I think about Psalm 19:1, and God says that the heavens, he's shown us his handiwork. It says, the work of his hands. And it says that, the heavens declare the glory of God. Well, that's what I see in the heavens all around us, that God made these beautiful structures. You see Orion Nebula and the Pleiades. But then...
Internet connection problem.
You're probably not there anymore, are you?
Off.
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know, internet problem or something.
It just
But
died.
okay, you're back.
Bit of censorship by the NSA, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I knew they were tracking me. What was it the other day that happened? I feel like something happened the other day that I blamed on them, but I can't remember what it was. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Was it not being able to see the lunar eclipse? Was that it?
Well, yeah, that was kind of, well, were you able to see this last April, lunar eclipse we had a few while? I understood it was it most of Australia? I don't know, were you able to see it? The blood moon, yeah, the full total lunar eclipse. Yeah, unfortunately for us, it cleared up about halfway when it was coming back. So, yeah, I was pretty aggravated about that, especially since we had to get up at I got up at 11.
He didn't wake me up. I couldn't believe it. I said,
It was
wake
cloudy.
me up. Oh, okay. Well, that explains it.
But anyway, I got to see the end. I got a picture up. But anyway, so would you give us your blog address real quick? I saw it earlier, but since you are better at giving out your stuff, then you can go ahead and give that to us.
Okay, that's johnhartnett.org, JOHNHARTNETT.org. Yeah, just go there. It's on cosmology, astronomy, everything about the creation evolution issues, but largely focused around the cosmos.
Right, so be sure to check it out, guys, and you can follow him on Twitter. I'll have a link to his article that I saw about the Big Bang smoking gun, and yeah, I'm gonna post a little excerpt on that on the Creation Astronomy Now news blog, linking it to that so you guys can check that out. And while you're at it, be sure to like Creation Astronomy Now on Facebook. We just got 30 likes, which means that I get the insights and the username. And what else is there? You can follow us on Twitter at Astronomy News. You can follow us on YouTube for those of you who are watching this on YouTube. If not, be sure to check us out because video is the new thing. And John, any last words before we throw you to the wolves?
No, thanks for having me on. It's been great talking to you.
We can't do that to him. Can't we just let him go easy?
Oh, we'll just have to. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been great. I always like having these guys on here because they've had this experience. They've, studied, and I'm just.
And they actually have something worthwhile to say.
Just the worthwhile stuff. We're geeks. We have stuff to say, but still, it's great. It was great to have you here, and yeah.
It's been great, guys. It's really great. Yeah. Great to see some young astronomers.
Yeah, don't forget there are a lot of young creationists out there. Sometimes, like our friend from Creation Science for Kids, who's a mom. I don't think she's a homeschool, but she's a mom blogger. But she always likes to mention young scientists to the older scientists that get depressed and feeling like Elijah. So always remember, and yeah, till next time, take it easy. We are out.